وعلى رسول الله. So, if anyone has any questions about what the Imam discussed this evening, we want to delve into that now. But while you're thinking about your questions, we want to plug a lot of the events, the remaining events that we're going to have this weekend. Again, tomorrow, inshallah, at 3:30, we're going to have a lunch or an extended lunch or a later lunch here at this masjid around 3:30. And afterwards, we're going to have another talk talking about the life and legacy of Malcolm X at 5:30 after Asr. And then after Maghrib at MIC, the Memphis Islamic Center, we're going to talk about the making of the Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X? Now, who saw this documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, on Netflix? Okay. This documentary came out in 2020, I think right before the pandemic kicked off.
Right at the same time.
Right around the same time. And it had about 6 parts, I believe.
6 episodes.
And Imam Amin is going to go delve into that. We're going to talk about who actually killed Malcolm X and why that information has been hidden from us up until recently. And so a lot of the people who were involved in that were kind of hidden in plain sight. And it's been known, this information, and we're going to talk about that. It's going to be a very interesting talk, and that's going to be, again, at MIC after Maghrib tomorrow, inshallah. But if anyone has any questions, we can start off. Brother Quinn?
I need to stand in.
No, we hear you. Alaikum salam.
Question. This is economically based. Love the presentation. This is great. I'm originally from Memphis. I took my Shahada, in 2000 in Los Angeles. And a lot of the issues Memphis is going through, I saw, like you said firsthand at that time, some of the same issues in Los Angeles. So here's my question. Are there tangible, do you see tangible avenues or venues, if you will, of economic investment, of Muslim economic investment money? We touched on this. Memphis is a place very fertile, but you're going to need organic, rooted, ground up type of vertical integration, if you will, investment. Yeah. What is the possibility of more established Muslim businesses that can come plant seeds and help with the foundational structure of a good mechanism to provide jobs owned by Muslim businesses that can make it easier to keep folks in the fold? So, just an example. A Muslim restaurant business in, let's say, New Jersey or Philly, which is oversaturated with Muslims, and a lot of land, a lot of cheap property compared to the East Coast. Mm-hmm. Do you see that as ways to attract more Muslim businesses, whether it be East Coast, West Coast, for that matter, Canada, anywhere you've been that you or brothers or sisters that you can reach out to and say, hey, we got some fertile ground here. Islam is growing, but it needs social services. Brothers and sisters need jobs. So, what, based on what you see so far, could you see that playing out?
Bismillah. That's a lot. a lot to unpack. I'm gonna give you the short answer. Is tremendous opportunity. Let me first say this first and foremost. A place like Memphis is even more fertile ground than where I'm from in the Northeast, because property in Memphis is much more affordable than anything you can buy in the Northeast. Like, there's not any more areas in the Northeast where you can go like they did at Midtown Manhattan and start buying houses around there. because in areas in New Jersey and New York like that, Jews and other people have already started buying those houses, and now communities that black people used to live in, now they building $1 million houses in places that used to be hoods.
Yeah.
Right? So what has to happen, first and foremost, before you start attracting or trying to attract Muslims from other areas, you got to locate your own homegrown Memphis entrepreneurs and get them to invest. And I would venture to say this, and you know, I know we on video. I'm gonna say this: the best way for you to jumpstart that, you get people that were involved in the streets before Islam to have money, and you help them find ways to clean their money up by investing in halal, purify their wealth. That's what you do, because part of the thing that's going to need to happen is that as people come into Islam, people that may have situations where they have records, they ain't gonna be able to just go to a regular place and get no job anyway. We're gonna have to employ them. We're gonna have to find places to employ them. So we're gonna need to have that business infrastructure that's built. But it has to start here, because you're not gonna be able to attract the people that you want to have come here until they see you already doing something on your own. So it has to be, you gotta gain critical mass. And it don't have to be a bunch. We talked about earlier what? Islam under the Prophet ﷺ started with 4 people, right? 4 people at a dinner in the living room. So we could build businesses with just a core group of Muslims that are dedicated to doing something. Again, that's the beauty of some of the models that we know before. Brothers would come into Islam and they knew ways to make money, so they would show other brothers how to make money.
Hey, piggyback on what he said, to be specific, you didn't say melanated, brother, man. That's really what it is. Like,
The what?
we keep dancing around.
You said the what? I missed what you said at the beginning.
I use the word melanated.
Okay, I couldn't hear melanated. Yeah, the black man. We ain't got to dance around it. The black man.
But I'm saying, we been dancing around.
Yeah.
Because I felt, brother, I caught it, but he didn't see it.
Yeah.
You
No.
know what we need, like.
Yeah. Well, see, one of the things, you know, and we got to have a couple of separate discussions. We got to have, let me back up for a minute. One of the things that I've always talked to some of my teachers about, those that I studied Islam with over the years, and one of my teachers agreed with me on this. I said that Muslim teachers, imams and da'is and people that are responsible for conveying information about Islam, I don't think that they collectively, and I have to put myself in that category as one that has been able to teach a lot over the years, we don't have enough discussions about telling the wealthy Muslim their responsibility. That needs to be a conversation that needs to have. What's the responsibility of the Muslim with wealth? Because sometimes we don't even like to have the conversation about wealth from an Islamic standpoint, because we only want to equate wealth with dunya. We don't want to equate wealth with being something that Allah also gives us that we can do good for. Everybody that gets money don't necessarily want to go out and buy a big car or a big house. People use money to do good things, which is why we ask Allah for what? Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatin wal fil akhirati hasanatin wa qina adhaban nar. Oh Allah, give us the best in this life and the best in the next. So we want to use dunya in order to do the good. That's going to help us achieve the best in the next life. So first and foremost, foundational to what you said, we can't be afraid to have conversations about money. And that's part of the reason. And I have to just say this, sometimes it becomes, excuse me, brothers, it becomes a black thing. My father we used to joke in the early days that black people go to a community and establish a masjid, and then immigrants come and they establish businesses. And then everything we need, we have to buy from them. We never go into a masjid community with a multi-pronged approach and say that the masjid is going to own all the businesses. So you can't come and do a business unless you're going to be partners with a masjid, because we need that money to be reinvested back in the community. See, we just come in, like I said earlier, we just worry about the prayer rug. We in a carpet business. So we just want to be in the carpet business, and we don't have conversations about what we need to do to acquire wealth in order to redistribute that wealth within the communities. So first and foremost, my first steps, Brother Quinn, would be identify those people in your local area that are business minded, that you know have resources or that have access to resources. Begin to have those conversations, formulate a plan, And then you start to take the steps in establishing something that you could present as a viable model. Here's what we're doing in Memphis, right? It's scaled here, but with a greater investment, and we can build capacity and do even more. And people will go where there's fertile ground. I had a brother, I consider him a friend of mine, you know, one of my elders over the years. His name is Luqman Abdul Haq. If you know anything about music, there's a company called Philadelphia International Records, the OJs, Teddy Pendergrass, all those people. Luqman Abdul Haq is the man formerly known as Kenny Gamble. Multi-millionaire. I worked for him. Established a community development effort in Universal, called Universal Companies in South Philadelphia. You know, part of it, they have a masjid, things of that nature, but the bigger part of this is a whole social service infrastructure. And one of the things he told me in my early conversations when I first went to work for him, and we used to have conversations about community development, how do you transform communities? One day he told me, he said, you know what I mean? He said, people make community development more complicated than it needs to be. He said, you know how to develop a community? He said, you just go into the worst part of any city, the part of the city that nobody wants to be in, and just claim it. Just go there and just be there. Everybody else left it, it's abandoned for a reason. Own it. Buy everything there, clean it up, put businesses there, make it a place to live, and people will gravitate back there. So the same impoverished South Philadelphia community that he used to buy vacant houses 30 years ago for $500 a piece and $1,000 a piece, right now to this day is $1 million homes being built in that neighborhood. Because somebody took the initiative to go in, clean it up, and invest in it. But it has to start. It has to start from somebody making an investment and showing that it can be done. And then once you do that, people will come and they'll be attracted to wanting to do that. But it has to start somewhere. And last point, I think every masjid, every Islamic institution, some masjids don't want to be in business, and I understand that because you have this idea of people want to keep the religious apart from the business. I don't know why. I understand it. That doesn't mean I agree with it. So let me be clear about that. But every masajid or Islamic center entity needs to have a companion community development corporation. That's your 501c3 tax exempt organization that you can go and you can buy property, you can engage in business, and then the money that you make from those ventures goes to support the programs and services of the masjid. Because this donation model that we're on, it dries up at a certain point in time, and then you'll be like in my city where people are trying to build projects and build masajids and things, and you know what they're doing? They're going to the same people who've been giving for 30 and 40 years, and the reason that those projects don't happen is something that we don't take into account. A person can give you $10,000 at a banquet, Hamid, if they still working and making $150,000 and they got another 10 years of their career ahead. They give you $10,000, ain't no money, you're gonna make that back. But now you're asking that same person who retired and on a fixed income to give at the level that they used to give when they worked. Right, it doesn't work. And that's what's happening throughout America. So that old fundraising model does not work when your donor pool is the people that's been funding institutions from the 70s and the 80s and 90s. So you're going to have some other viable economic mechanism in place in order to generate money. And let's stop being scared of this whole idea, oh, we got a 501c3, the government going to get in our business. Government in your business anyway, man. When the Imam said, Walad Dorleen, the Fed said, I mean, they in here, the place is wired, and ain't nothing that goes on in this place that they don't know about. Stop it. Let's stop it, man. Really, no. Let's stop all this mystery guys, spooky stuff. They know what we're doing. You got a cell phone, you being tracked already. They know what you're doing. They know what you think when you think it. This is why when you go on your phone, you get 20 different ads of something that you looked at a couple of times because they tracking everything you do. It's the algorithm. So stop thinking that if you don't put your name down on paperwork, that you moving in secrecy and they don't know what you're doing. They know what you're doing already. So let's stop being scared about going back and getting money that belonged to us to begin with. If you got a job and you pay taxes, you already invested in the infrastructure anyway. So why don't you set up a not-for-profit structure where you can go and take advantage of the very system that you participate in anyway, whether you want to or not. The people don't give you no option whether or not they're going to take the money from your check. You work for them, they're going to take their money before you get your money. You look at it, oh man, I worked a lot longer than this, man. They took my money. They don't even give you the chance to just pay taxes. When you pay taxes in April, that's for what they didn't take already. Right. If you work on a job, That's what they didn't take. What you underpaid is what you owe. The other people, the poor people model is that what? You pay and then you got to file to get your money back that they held all year. It's ridiculous, man. So I know I went around the corner to answer your question, but that's the essence of it. Find some people, start where you at. Start right in Memphis, start at home. Charity begins at home, then spreads abroad. When people see you doing it and they see a model, they'll come from all over the country to invest. Why? Because everybody want to be on a winning team, right? But oftentimes, nobody wants to be that pioneer and be the first to jump out there, you know, because we risk averse, particularly people that ain't never had nothing. You ain't never had nothing, then hey, you work with scared money. You don't want to invest nothing, man. So I'm gonna keep all my money under the mattress, man, because I know it's safe there. You know, I'm not gonna invest anything. So find those people, and we know who they are. We know the community. We talk to people. We know who's in the position to do what and at what level, what capacity. And you have people just donate and give and invest to their own capacity. And I guarantee you, brother, and I say this, and Allah knows best. You know, Allah certainly knows best. I guarantee it. Saying it's based on experience, but no, Allah musta'an, Allah knows best. That brothers that come into Islam, that come out of the street, if you show them viable ways that they can make money, they don't have no interest in wanting to be in the street anymore. I know plenty of brothers in New Jersey that was involved in the street, man, and now Allah blessed them and they invested. I know a brother was involved in the street, man. He owned about 5-6 apartment buildings, laundromats, everything, right? But why? Somebody showed him the game. Somebody showed him the model. So when brothers come in and they accept Islam and they come from that environment, why don't we put them with people that's successful? I'm gonna show you how to make money so you don't have to live in both worlds. Mm-hmm. That's how you get them all the way in. That's how you get them invested. That's how you get them to enter into Islam wholeheartedly.
Alhamdulillah.
You know.
Inshallah.
Thanks a lot. I mean, while yet. Yeah. You passed it to him. Okay. Walaikum salam.
You mentioned earlier, as far as the da'wah is different, let's say between a rich and a poor man, or maybe let's say possibly between an African American and a white person,
Absolutely.
and maybe older person and a young person. I'm trying to understand how is it different between, let's say, a 30-year-old African American in Memphis and a 30-year-old African American in New Jersey. Is it the location?
Geographic factors based on where you live.
And you elaborate more about this.
Yeah, geographic factors. I tell you one thing, boy, would be different. It costs a 30-year-old African American in New Jersey 3 times more than it costs a 30-year-old African American that lives in Memphis. So that's a different kind of conversation. You know what I mean? So all these are factors, man. All these are things that we have to, take under consideration when we're having these conversations. So I appreciate that question. It's very good. So it is different, Again, that's why we have to, as Muslims, we have to pay more attention to what I call, this term is called situational awareness, right? Understanding where we are, how we need to move in certain environments, how we relate in certain environments, how certain things and concepts may transfer to some places and it may not do it in other places. So we find similarities, you know what I mean? So, you can look at a model and say a 30-year-old dawa to a 30-year-old in New York and dawa to a 30-year-old in Philadelphia. Yeah, it's parallels there because it's the same region, same job market, same economic factors, same weather, all these different things that impact the person's life on the ground. But when you're talking about different parts of the country, particularly when you're talking about North versus South, man, please, it's a whole nother cultural dynamic that you got to factor in when you start talking about, the giving of dawah, One point I wanted to mention, that we didn't cover, and when I talked about setting up the formal programs in the masjid, to help navigate people to Islam, whether it's a 30-day program or whatever, however you decide, and it can always be subject to change. Another very important aspect of dawah is that we have to begin to give more public programs at the masjid and Islamic center level that you, me, all of us as Muslims can bring our non-Muslim family member and people that work with us.
Yeah.
That's very important. And that was something that was very instrumental in my development, where many people in my family ended up coming into Islam because they just had such a good time interacting with Muslims. And we showed them a different way of socialization, a different way of entertainment, a different way of culture, a different way of all these things, right? But we can't do that if we just maybe once a year, once every 2 years or whatever, we give a program. We may have to do something regular. You know, I mean, some communities do a good job with doing Ramadan. They have these, you know, meet your Muslim neighbor. So if you live in a place like this and there's residential units around here, you invite the neighbors. We're having a program at our mosque Saturday, come and have some food with us, whatever. And the people, that might be their first time in the masjid. You know, those kind of things work. But I say you do something regular, a couple of times a year, where you give some type of cultural program. And if you don't have the space for it in the masjid, then you do it someplace else. But here, you got it. You got this whole space. You can take this shit there. You could do it right here. Just invite people, do some program at the masjid, and you invite people to come here. Or your responsibility as a Muslim, we did this in New Jersey once. It was a beautiful thing. A brother gave he gave a dawa dinner. We did it at a public school that they gave us access to on a Sunday, right? We fed people free dinner. We had Imam Shabazz come in. We gave a couple of talks about Islam. If you was Muslim, your dinner was also free if you brought a non-Muslim guest. So guess what? We had, on a Sunday afternoon, random Sunday afternoon, we had 500 people there. Every Muslim came, brought at least 1 or 2 guests, right? The old way, the old concept. We gonna raise the dead, bring them in, and guess what? You may get a few people that may accept Islam because they may have already been inclined to want to accept Islam anyway. So now you go back to my old training. You ask, you know, how many people are with us for your first time? You know, have you ever been around Muslims before? You know, what did you hear? Did you hear anything today that interests you? Is this something you think you would want to do and be as the way of life? Yeah, I'm in. You know what I mean? Then boom, you start them on the process. But if we don't ever engage the people, man, like what are we like, man? Islam in America, in most of our cities, man, it's the best kept secret in America. Only way they know we Muslims is they see us coming back and forth to the masjid, and we might be dressed a certain way. But we don't interact with them in any way where we're actually doing any real outreach, you know? So if we really went out and even gave a half-throated effort of inviting people to Islam, we would see that Allah will allow us to be able to reach a lot of people, man, you know? And Allah knows best.
Is anyone else?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You said something about retention. And one thing I noticed about community is one thing I noticed about the community is no like unity between either the African Americans or the immigrants, or like during Ramadan, you see a major involvement between everybody.
Right.
Like after Ramadan is like everybody go their separate ways. So it's gonna be hard to keep a new Muslim if they don't feel that love. Like say like a gang, or like I was in the military.
Yes, sir.
When you was in the military, we had a real brotherhood.
Yeah.
And this almost supposed to be a brotherhood as well. They don't feel like that.
Right.
Especially like if you're a new Muslim, when you become a new Muslim, your family might shun you when you get to the masjid. And they shun you too, so it's like you feel alone. You see what I'm saying? And that's the problem.
I know exactly what you're saying. Now, let me comment on that. I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna give some of y'all, ain't none of y'all gonna get mad, but the people that's watching this will get mad. There's one exception to that. If you're a white Muslim. If you're a white new Muslim and accept Islam, they give you a parade. They give you a parade. They celebrate you. And they'll step over 10 people of color to give one white person shahada, because it makes them feel better about themselves. Because most people, many people, not all, I'm not gonna stereotype, many people, even though they're Muslim, they still color struck, and they still under the guise that they want to be accepted by white people.
I agree with you because I went to a match and spoke to a brother, spoke to a couple people. They don't look me, kept off.
Yeah, they don't. No, it's real. So I get I get your point, and one of the things I talk about in this book in particular, and I'm not just saying it because I want you to buy it. I do want you to support the book if you can, because what my brother would tell you, most of the talks I do around the country, I go to a lot of communities that don't have the money to bring me, and I'll fly on my own dime and just sell books. Some communities are generous, alhamdulillah, they'll pay to bring me some. In places, if they need me to come, and they say, we don't really have it, we can only cover the whole, all right, I'll find a cheap plane ticket, I'll come. And what we do in publishing, we'll pay for the trip, So one of the things I talk about in this book, I do a section, there's a whole section called Bridging the Gap Between Black and Immigrant Muslims. Because it's a major problem that we're dealing with. And sadly, we can learn from each other. See, there was a time in America, and I want some of you brothers that may have migrated here later to think about this. See, in the 70s and 80s, maybe even early 90s, there wasn't a whole such thing as like separate immigrant masjids. Immigrants will come and they will go right to usually the nearest black masjid, and they would be there. But then as the years went on, they would gain critical mass, and then they would go and establish a masjid along ethnic lines. And you know what? I don't have an issue with that. Because from a cultural standpoint, I understand that. There's certain things you may want to do, certain ways you may want to move culturally that you just want to have a space where you can do that, where you're more comfortable. I understand that. As long as what you're doing isn't excluding other Muslims, I'm good with that. But what happens is that because that started happening, we started to be in situations where we didn't get a chance to really engage each other and learn from one another. So now you have like this separate but equal. We'll come together for Ramadan or come together maybe for certain special events, but there's no real continuity. There's no real unity working on things collectively. So those are the kind of things that we talked about earlier over lunch. We've been talking about this for years. Whether it's an African American or Black American centered masjid or quote unquote an immigrant masjid of any ethnicity, we have to begin to find common areas that we can work on together. And when we find common areas and common projects and goals and objectives that we can work on together, and we start with that as a basis, then Allah will allow us to continue to grow and develop those relationships, and the whole community will benefit from it. But as long as we're separate and apart, it's always going to be this tension, and there's always going to be a certain segment of underserved communities that are going to just have the resentment. Like, why immigrants come here making all the money? We know we ought to open restaurants, but we can't open a restaurant. And it's funny, I've seen this happen in real time. I know a restaurant right now in Newark and this is just, be honest with you, this is just black people stuff. There were some Muslims, a black Muslim family had a restaurant in Newark, and the restaurant struggled. The service was good, food and everything was good. They ended up selling the restaurant to a brother from Palestine, a good brother, very good Muslim, charitable and everything. In the same location, with the same menu, he sells halal soul food. Fried chicken, greens, macaroni and cheese. He turned that business that struggled into a $1 million business. And I say part of that is black people, you know why? Because we hate ourselves. Even to the point, now I'm gonna go buy that ice from the white man. His ice is colder. The elders used to joke about that. The elders used to joke about it. Why? Because this American society has done such a job on people, man, that it's demoralized people to the point that they don't think that, that they measure up, and that to support other people is better than supporting your own. And then it becomes ingrained in the psyche of people where now the norm, the phenomena becomes among, many, particularly African-American or black communities. You know what people say about us? And we found this out to be true. They said that as black people, and I'm saying that because we're in a predominantly black city, Memphis, brothers, so bear with me, my brothers that aren't black, but y'all here, y'all relate. Y'all know the black man probably better than some of the black men know each other because y'all relate to us. They said that black people, we buy what we want and we beg for what we need.
Let me say that again.
We buy what we want, but beg for what we need. So if it's something we want that's frivolous and trivial, we'll find a way to get it. But then we'll beg for money to establish institutions or to do other things that's beyond us. So it just developed just a slave mindset. And we always find ourselves being economically disenfranchised. And this is the point I was making before I went off on my tangent. You bear with me, right? My father and I used to joke, we used to be like, it's like when certain people will immigrate or migrate to this country, it's like somebody from their country gave them a map and told them where all the black people was and just said, go set up businesses there. Because they don't own their own businesses. And you know what I found out? In some places, that was true. People told them that. Where you going right now? They just focus on being in the masjid. They just want to pray all day. They don't want to do nothing else. You could establish the place right there. And it's not uncommon that the masjid that I helped establish is in a predominantly black neighborhood. And a sister just opened up a restaurant a couple of years ago, small place. She does pretty good. But the biggest anchor restaurant in the area, immigrant Muslim-owned pizza parlor, been there 30 years, right? And I'm good. I want them to make money. I want all of us to be successful. But what I'm saying is that we focus on masjid development. Again, like I said, we in the carpet business. Let's get the carpet. Let's establish Islam. We ain't got to worry about making money. Allah's going to provide for us. Let's just keep praying and doing what we have to do. And we don't think about making money or being, economically self-sufficient. And my perspective is that, again, any community, when people come, they need to have a relationship enough with the masjid where the masjid is like, hey, we'll support your business, but the masjid is going to be your partner in this business. Mm-hmm. So that some of those resources go back to the masjid. Mm-hmm. It has to happen. Imam Siraj, everybody knows who he is now, right? Yeah. Brooklyn, New York, Masjid al-Taqwa. They bought a building back in the 80s from the city for $25,000 at a city auction, right? That building right now, because of gentrification in Brooklyn, that's a multi-million-dollar business. A multi-million-dollar building. It's a mosque and there's stores on each side of the store. Each side of the building. The masjid is on the corner. Stores here, to the right, to the left. The masjid doesn't run any of those businesses. They rent out the spaces. So the people that own the restaurant bring in more money than the masjid does. Mm. So for me, and Imam, everybody know that's my teacher, that's my man. But that's a structural flaw, man. No, man, you can't get that restaurant, man. You got to partner with the masjid. We gonna run that restaurant with you. If nothing else makes money, it's food by a masjid. You're gonna make money. You get 1,000 people at Juma. That's the main halal restaurant on that block. Everybody going there to eat. So what I'm saying, that's the way we have to start thinking. When we develop worship, masjid, center, ibadah, we got to look at the wealth part, the economic part. And even the brothers that want to call themselves Salafi, I had this conversation with a young brother who reminded me of this. He said, Imam, I have an issue with some of the brothers that be talking about we Salafi this, Salafi that. And for the young brother that may not understand, people they say they trace their Islam back to the first 3 generations of Muslims. So the brother reminded me of something, a young brother. He said, guess what? You wouldn't have found no Salaf, no companions of the Prophet, prayers and peace be upon him, if that 4 of them lived on the block, that they didn't own everything on the block. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you want to talk about following the Salaf, don't just limit it to the fact that you're going to grow your beard out and wear a thobe this high. Establish yourself economically the way the Salaf did. Pool your resources the way that the Salaf did. Be all in it or stop faking it.
Allahu Akbar.
And of course, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
All right, does anyone else have any questions? All right, if not, we're going to close it out. I just want to again remind people about the program tomorrow.
Yeah, it's very important.
Again, we have a lunch at 3:30 tomorrow here in Masjid Saddam. Afterwards, we have a program where we're talking about the transformation of Malcolm X at 5:30. And then the final program at after Maghrib and MIC, Memphis Islamic Center, we'll be talking about the making of the Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, whom Imam Amin Nathari was in that documentary. He's going to be talking about some behind the scenes things that occurred. He's going to be talking about the person, again, who was accused of killing Malcolm X, was hidden in plain sight. And he's going to talk about him and his situation.
Let me say this, and I hope you all can come tomorrow for the program. We'll have a more built out discussion about it. But let's make no mistake about it, man. The government knew all along who it was. So we can say a person was hiding in plain sight. They knew, that's why the New York Police Department just got sued and had to exonerate the people that they wrongfully accused and had to pay one of the brothers, we understand, maybe $20-30 million for the 20 years he did in jail for something he didn't have anything to do with. But they knew all along. So the whole situation was just an unfortunate situation. It was a cover up at the highest level, and we're not going to come out and we can't definitively say that the government was involved in actually pulling the trigger that killed them, but they certainly had a hand in creating the environment that allowed that to happen and for it to go along as long as it did. And the reason that this program I'm sure is happening now is because Sunday would have been, is the 99th birth anniversary of Malcolm X. Imagine that. And man, if Allah allowed him to live, he would have been 99. So there's no guarantee he would even, at this point, it's not like earlier years where people be like, oh man, what if he was still among us now? Generations are only connected to Malcolm based on, what they know of him from the documentaries and things like that. Most of them haven't even read the autobiography, So we're going to have a real conversation tomorrow, first and foremost, about his life and legacy, what transformed him. Because I need everybody to understand, it was Islam that transformed him, but he was only what we understand to be a Sunni Muslim for 11 months of his life. So let's not gloss over the fact that it was the Islam of the nation that got him out of the gutter and put him in a position to be able to receive the message of Islam from the universal standpoint once he got it. All right, let's understand that. Let's understand also. No, what I ain't saying that. Y'all come to the lecture tomorrow, inshallah. All right, come to the lecture, inshallah. Right after lunch, we'll have lunch, and then we'll have the lecture Q&A. Then we go out to MIC, and I tell you, we're gonna go to MIC, and basically, I'm looking at that. They want to do the interview about the documentary and all that. But there's some things I got to share out there in the context of what we talked about tonight. They're not getting off the hook. We just gonna go out there and have a conversation about, no, man, we need to know, hey, you out here, Allah bless y'all doing, what's your investment among the people that need your help? All right, because I'm not interested in, I got a whole bunch of mega matches I could go visit. I'm not really beat to come out there and to compliment you on how beautiful your multi-million-dollar masjid is. I'm just being honest with you. I want to know what it is you're doing on the ground to help impact the lives of people. I understand what you're doing to protect your community life, Last point, let me say this, then we get out of here. When I first started this work, right, back in 1993, I just finished what they considered my 30th anniversary last year. Alhamdulillah, a group of people got together, family and friends. They gave a 30 years of service dinner for me in New Jersey. My first lecture was at a black masjid, an African-American masjid that used to be a mosque in the days of the old Nation of Islam, and then it made the transition. It became a masjid, Masjid Allah, Plainfield, New Jersey. After I spoke that afternoon, a Sunday afternoon, which was supposed to be an informal discussion, a lot of people came out. It initially was supposed to be me addressing a class of new Muslims. I was going to speak to a new Shahada class. And when the Imam of the masjid found out that I was coming, he told the brother who coordinated the class, oh no, let him give the Sunday Talim lecture. So I was like, oh man, now I'm giving a whole lecture, I'm notes and all this other stuff. But apparently, I guess I didn't do too bad, because when I finished, by that next week, I started getting invitations to speak all over the place, because there were some immigrants from other communities that attended that lecture at the masjid that day. And what they invited me to come into their centers to speak about, primarily for that first year, because this is October 93, then you went into January 94. By January 94, 30 years back from now, most of my lectures in that first year was about challenges facing Muslim youth and young people, because so many immigrant communities were losing their children to this American way. And they didn't know how to maintain it, and they used to marvel in their mind and say, how is this 30-year-old black man in the mosque? He clean cut. You could tell he don't drink, he don't smoke, he ain't never been to jail. Not downgrading anybody who's been there. I'm just saying that for them, that was like a success story. Like, how does he do it? Like, we can't keep our girls chaste. We can't keep our young boys, correct. So how did he do it? So they used to invite me to give all these lectures for a year. That's all we were talking about, challenges facing Muslim youth. And that was at the height of when they started really building a lot of mega mosques and centers, because they started to understand that they were going to have to build these self-contained communities in order to protect their children. So that what? Everything was at the masjid. You don't have a whole lot of reason to be on the street. Everything that we're going to do, we're going to provide activities for you right here in Memphis Islamic Center, at Islamic Center on Long Island, at Epic. All these places all over the country that are mega mosques, they all basically grew as an outgrowth of them having to find ways to protect their community. So I'm saying that to say that other people looked at parts of our model that we abandoned and then picked it up and made it work for their community. So now we got to get back to setting up those same institutions again that are friendly, kid-oriented centers. You hear those kids in there screaming? That's fine. We need to let them do that. But you know what needs to happen when we have a place with bigger space? We need to have a game room for them. So while old people in here talking about the same lectures that we've been giving for 20 years, at least they could be in here doing something constructive with their lives. Right. Instead of the only thing they know about the masjid is when they come for the Quran school on the weekends. Give them some other activities that also make it fun for them to come to the masjid. And that'll cultivate their love for Islam, or they'll love being in the building. And I'm telling you and sharing with you things that we've seen have worked in other cities. I'm not telling you stuff that I'm just sit back at home and start thinking about what I think will work. I'm telling you based on what Allah has allowed me to witness from best practices, seeing what works. And one of the best things we're able to learn from is best practices. Outside of the Quran and the prophetic tradition, there's no better way to learn of things that will help our situation than to look at what other people have done and take the most successful parts of those and see how we can replicate it. And as long as it's not something that's going to put us in conflict with what Allah has commanded us to do, then we do it. There's no limitations on that. But we can't narrow ourselves so much where we look at it, and like one of my teachers used to say, a lot of these modern day Salafi or other brothers, you go to do something, the Prophet didn't do that. We do this, do that. The Prophet didn't do that. That's the wrong question. The question isn't whether the Prophet did it or not. The question is, what would the Prophet do in this circumstance? What would he do in this circumstance, knowing everything we know about the Prophet ﷺ, and if he had to apply it to this context, what would he do? That's the question that intelligence scholarships asked. You ask the question, what would happen in this time, place, and circumstance based on what we know the Prophet did based on revelation? How would we apply that today? And Allah knows best. So inshallah, we hope to see y'all tomorrow. All right, jazakallah khairan. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Glory be to you, O Allah, and to you is the praise. I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped except you. I repent to you and ask you to forgive us all. Ameen.
Ameen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.